You've heard of the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse: war, famine, pestilence, death, riding at the end of days. But who are they really? And what were they meant to represent when this legend first took shape? To understand the Four Horsemen, we have to go back to a single, unsettling book. The Revelation of John, the last book of the New Testament. Written near the end of the 1st century, likely under Roman rule, it's not a calm theological essay. It's a vision, violent, symbolic, and drenched in cosmic imagery. In this vision, John sees a scroll in the hand of a heavenly figure called the Lamb, sealed with 7 seals. When each seal is broken, another fragment of the end unfolds. The first 4 seals do not bring fire from the sky or oceans of blood. They bring riders. Revelation didn't appear in a vacuum. Long before John wrote his vision, the Jewish prophets had already seen mysterious riders and divine chariots. In the book of Zechariah, different colored horses patrol the earth as God's messengers, reporting on peace and unrest among the nations. These earlier images planted the seed, horses and riders as instruments of divine judgment, moving swiftly, crossing borders beyond any human army's control. John takes that seed and lets it bloom into something far more terrifying. The Four Horsemen are not given names in the original text, except for the last rider called Death. Their identities are described through what they carry, the color of their horses, and the consequences that follow each one. Over centuries, artists, theologians, and storytellers turned those details into the famous quartet we know today. But if we move slowly, seal by seal, the picture is stranger and more complex than the simple war, famine, pestilence, death list you've probably heard. When the first seal is broken, a rider appears on a white horse. He holds a bow, a crown is given to him, and he rides out, conquering and to conquer. At first glance, white suggests purity, victory, or even something holy. Some early readers thought this horseman might represent Christ or the spread of the gospel, but others saw something darker: the cold, unstoppable force of conquest itself, the expansion of empires, the march of armies that call themselves righteous as they trample everything in their path. In later centuries, people also linked this rider to plague, with the bow representing arrows of sickness, an invisible invasion that conquers without banners or marching feet. Already we see the ambiguity. Is this a savior on a white horse, or the beginning of a chain reaction of ruin? Then comes the second seal, and with it, the red horse. Its rider is given a great sword and the power to take peace from the earth, so that people slay one another. Unlike the distant ambition of conquest, this is violence up close. Civil wars, rebellions, massacres. Red is not just the color of battle flags, it's the color of fresh blood, the stain that refuses to wash out of history. For the early Christian communities who first heard Revelation read aloud, this would have hit hard. They lived under the shadow of Roman power, where riots, revolts, and brutal crackdowns were constant threats. In this horseman, they saw the fragility of human order, how quickly peace can evaporate when fear and anger catch fire. The third seal reveals a black horse, and this rider carries a pair of scales. A voice declares the price of grain, a day's wages for only enough wheat to feed one person, and careful protection of oil and wine. This isn't just hunger, it's economic imbalance, the kind you can feel in the pit of your stomach. Famine and scarcity for many, luxury preserved for a few. The scales symbolize weighing out food so precisely that nothing is wasted, because there is nothing to spare. The earliest listeners would have known the terror of crop failures and imperial taxes, when a bad harvest could mean starvation, while the wealthy still feasted. This horseman isn't just about empty fields. It's about injustice that multiplies suffering when the world is already on the edge. Finally, the fourth seal, and the most chilling rider of all. A pale horse emerges. In the original Greek, the word chloros suggests a sickly, greenish, corpse-like hue. The one who sits on it is named Death, and Hades, the realm of the dead, follows close behind, like a shadow swallowing the fallen. Authority is given to them over a fourth of the earth to kill with sword, famine, plague, and wild beasts. This last rider doesn't bring a new disaster. He gathers all the previous ones and claims their victims. In him, war, famine, and pestilence converge into a single, skeletal figure. He is the silence after the screaming. Taken together, the Four Horsemen form a pattern, a sequence of escalating crises. First comes ambition and expansion, then open conflict, then economic collapse and hunger, and finally mass death. You can see why interpreters throughout history have looked at their own times and said, "This is it. The horsemen are riding now." Because this pattern isn't just a supernatural prediction, it's a cycle that plays out whenever power, violence, and greed run unchecked. So, how did different ages read this vision? Early Christians under Rome often saw the horsemen as symbols of the empire's brutality, persecution, and the judgment that would eventually fall on it. Medieval theologians sometimes mapped each rider to specific historical invasions, famines, and plagues, the fall of kingdoms, the Black Death, the chaos that tore through Europe. During wars and revolutions, preachers loved this imagery. The red horse thundering across battlefields, the black horse walking through ruined markets, the pale horse stalking cities filled with unburied dead. For them, Revelation wasn't a distant fantasy. It was a coded description of their own collapsing world. Over time, four major ways of reading Revelation emerged, even if people didn't always use these labels. Some saw the horsemen as mostly about the past, fulfilled in the first centuries of the church. Others read them as a timeline of all of history, with each rider marking a different era. Many modern believers expect them in the future, as literal events that will unfold at the very end. And some see them as timeless symbols, not predicting specific dates but exposing the recurring nightmares of human civilization: conquest, conflict, deprivation, and death. You can probably feel this tension. Are the Four Horsemen prophecy, metaphor, or both? When we look at the 20th and 21st centuries, world wars, genocides, engineered famines, global pandemics, it's easy to map the riders onto our headlines. The white horse and ruthless ideologies that promise salvation while bringing domination. The red horse in trenches, bombed out cities, and civil wars streamed online. The black horse in economic crises where entire nations starve while others profit. The pale horse in mass graves, hospital corridors, and the quiet numbers on a screen counting the dead. And of course, the horsemen have galloped far beyond religious texts into pop culture. They appear in paintings by Albrecht Dürer, in novels and comic books, in TV shows and video games. Sometimes they're literal characters, four villains, four bosses to defeat, four figures with distinct powers and personalities. Sometimes they're just shorthand. A movie poster with four riders on a horizon tells you everything you need to know about what kind of story you're entering. But in these modern retellings, details often get simplified or shuffled. Pestilence is added as its own rider, even though the Bible doesn't name such a figure separately. Colors and weapons change, theology is replaced by aesthetics, and the original context fades, leaving behind only the raw, powerful image. Yet that image survives because it speaks to something we still feel. We live in a world where we can destroy cities from the sky, collapse economies overnight, and spread information, or misinformation, at the speed of light. The horsemen are not just riders from an ancient scroll. They are the personification of what happens when human power is unchained from wisdom and mercy. They are the story we tell ourselves when we fear that everything might fall apart, not because of one monster, but because of many small choices multiplied across nations and years. In the end, the core warning behind the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse is disturbingly simple. A world built on conquest, violence, exploitation, and indifference will eventually call down its own judgment. Whether you believe Revelation describes an exact future event, a symbolic pattern in history, or a spiritual truth about the human condition, the message is the same. If we worship power above all else, the horsemen ride. If we starve the poor while the wealthy protect their luxuries, the horsemen ride. If we treat human lives as numbers on a page, the horsemen ride. And now, you know where this legend comes from. Not just as a cool image in a video game or a movie, but as a vision born in the fears and hopes of real people under empire and oppression. So when you hear hoofbeats in the stories around you, ask yourself, which rider are we inviting into our world right now?